Good afternoon and welcome to the SILA Foundation's May webinar, Regulatory and Compliance Resources for Securities Professionals. My name is Julie Mendel and I'm the Education Trustee for the SILA Foundation. Before I introduce today's speakers, I have just a few housekeeping items for everyone. This webinar is about 1 hour in length and is being recorded. Within the next week, you will receive a link to the recording and a post-webinar survey, and we would really appreciate you completing that for us. Please mute your microphone and turn off your video so the focus stays on our speakers. We ask that you put your questions in the chat box. We will be monitoring and posing the questions to the speakers on your behalf. We will answer as many of the questions as we can in the time we have available. So a little about today's presentation. Our session will focus on how firms can effectively use key regulatory guidance and reporting tools to stay informed, prepare for examinations, and manage ongoing compliance responsibilities. Our industry experts will walk us through major resources such as the FINRA Annual Oversight Report and the SEC Exam Priorities Report, along with other important annual industry publications and tools. We'll explore how these resources work together, highlight the trends regulators are prioritizing, and share practical strategies firms can use to strengthen their compliance programs and overall risk management. We are joined today by two highly experienced individuals. Craig Harrison is a seasoned financial services compliance and registration leader with nearly 30 years of experience. He began his career at A.G. Edwards, where he spent 13 years progressing from margin clerk to managing legal matter intake and regulatory reporting. For the past 16 years, Craig has been with Benjamin F. Edwards, where he serves as the senior registration manager. In this role, he oversees securities registrations, insurance licensing, and continuing education programs. He holds multiple FINRA licenses, including the Series 7, 9, 10, 24, and 63, and is licensed in insurance across all 50 states. He currently serves as a securities chair on the SILA board and is a member of FINRA's Licensing and Registration Council. Also speaking to us today is Ann Robinson, who brings more than 25 years of experience in financial services operations, compliance, and compliance technology. She's been with Farmers Financial Solutions since 2018 and currently serves as the Chief Compliance Officer. Throughout her career, Ann has held key roles at Reg Ed, where she contributed to advancing compliance technology, and at Morgan Keegan, where she managed licensing, registration, and continuing education programs. She's been instrumental in driving automation and compliance functions, including conflicts of interest programs. Ann holds a Series 7, 66, 24, and 14, as well as California insurance license and several distinguished industry certifications. She's actively engaged in the industry, having served on the boards of the NSCP and the SILA Foundation and on FINRA's West Region Committee. So please join me in welcoming two of my favorite people, Craig and Ann, to our virtual webinar stage.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, we'll start with the priority letters. I think these are a great tool for anyone who's looking for just general guidance. So each year, the SEC issues an annual examination priorities letter. They typically come out around October or November. They will highlight for broker-dealers, investment advisors, clearing agencies. This really acts as a guideline on what you should see and what you should be focused on with your compliance program. You can actually see here that this one, there's self-regulatory organizations, clearing agencies, investment companies, also mutual funds, other participants. If you go in, if you look at things that are high risk, so are the recent one that would have called out cyber issues and Regulation SP. I do suggest that you look at these annually to make sure your compliance program aligns with SEC priorities. Next slide, please. The next one is the FINRA Oversight Letter. This letter's changed names a couple times. You'll hear, we'll just reference it now as the FINRA Letter. It's their annual regulatory oversight report. It's going to cover regulatory obligations, findings, and effective practices. They've published this one for several years now, and if you go into the letter on the FINRA website, if you just went in and looked up for FINRA Annual Regulatory Oversight Report, you can see the topics. If you click on the topic, they will bold anything that is prior that's new for the year. You can see any weaknesses in your compliance firm. We use this as a checklist. So we actually will take things that are effective for our business. We will look at what FINRA has noted as a finding, ensure that we would not have any of those items show up. We take the effective practices and we may add those in as a control. It's a great guideline. It's really a kind of the regulator telling you what they're expecting to see when they come in for an exam. And since they've been publishing this report, I can tell you that it very much aligns with the exam. At the bottom of the report, they will give you an additional resources link that will give you checklist, notices to members, regulatory references that you can pull that are very helpful in your compliance program. Next slide, please. One of the newer things that we've seen from FINRA is the FINRA podcast. So FINRA, it will give you the ability to go in and listen to these podcasts. You can do them while you're multitasking. If there's something specific that you're interested in, so they did a podcast, for example, on the regulatory oversight report that I mentioned on the prior slide. The examination trends, cybersecurity, vendor risk. There's a list of them here. You can listen to these at any point in time. They do record them, so they're always out there for you to jump in and listen to. I think they're a great resource for your compliance team. They're pretty high level. They're not a long, read that you would have to do, but really nice as a add-on when FINRA has a topic that you really want to know more about. The regulatory oversight report is published every year, and then they do a podcast along with it to highlight some of those trends. One specifically this year was the use of AI and crypto, and there were specific noted podcasts for those as well. So definitely, if you want to take a listen to those, they're very helpful to help guide those and highlight the items that are in the oversight report. Winter also has a lot of on-demand training. Most of it is free, so there are courses that are paid for. So you'll see the CRCP, which is you would need to pay for, and then the new blockchain education program. But if you go onto their website, the on-demand courses are at your own pace. You can log into those at any point in time. They also have weekly. They do different targeting, like small firms. So there's a whole list of items there on the events and training tab that you can listen to if you're new. So if you're logging in your first time to CRD and you're looking at how to manage that, there's technical and navigational webinars. Very helpful. You can use these to onboard new staff. In addition, as a refresher, if you may not have used something in quite a while, but it's a really good resource out there on the FINRA site. FINRA has been really working to add resources over the past, 5+ years and make it really easy for member firms to log in and access these tools. Next slide, please. Thank you. You also have a regional, so if you are a member firm and you're looking for guidance, there is someone who is elected in your district or region that you can actually reach out to. So FINRA will annually send out emails to your firm. You may not receive those, but you would be to vote for your regional committee member. That member is really assigned to you. They act as a liaison between the member firms and FINRA. I'm serving my second term in the regional committee, and we get to have a very open conversation with FINRA. So if there's something that you're looking for more guidance on, reach out to your regional committee member. They can actually reach out to FINRA on your behalf. It could be confidential. They don't have to mention your member firm, but have those conversations with FINRA directly to provide guidance back to you as a firm member in their region. If you go to the FINRA's governance page, you can look up your region and see who your members are and reach out to them directly. It will have their email address on there and any contact information you may need to have that conversation with them and get more clarity as they work with the FINRA senior management to get information for the firms. Over the last few years, we've also seen the FINRA rule modernization. So FINRA announced the FINRA Forward Focus. One of those is modernizing rules and empowering compliance and supporting resilience. If you go out to the FINRA website there, you can see there's a lot of tools, and we'll go into those in a few minutes. They include checklists and things like that for firms. For smaller firms, there's a lot of tools available that you can actually use and leverage that people have put together. So if you go to the rule oversight, you'll be able to see which rules are in process of being updated by FINRA. You can see where they're at in the process, any targeted timeline. You can see and track progress and feedback on the proposed changes. So there's a number of rules that have come out recently, one of those being the gift and gratuity rule. where they're changing the dollar amount. You could have seen that rule in the process as they were going through the modernization. Other rules that were recently modernized were really to help with the virtual work environment. So we saw different definitions come out for supervisory locations, non-branch locations to really support that virtual environment that we came into after the pandemic. All of that is part of that modernization initiative. But if you have any questions on any rule, where it's at, if it's actually being looked at right now, when you go to that website, you can see the rule itself and you can see all the details around it. You can also get down to the comment letters and see what other firms are saying about that proposed rule. There are dozens of rules that are in process right now. So anything that might be a hot topic to your firm, you can get out there and take a look at it. The next is the FINRA Member Hub, and I really highly, if you haven't taken a look at this, go out and take a look. So they do have all the latest notices to members, the guidelines, alerts. When you log in, those show up at the top of the page. You also have compliance resources. So the checklists are very beneficial. There are templates. You can see they're like the anti-money laundering template, cybersecurity threats and effective controls. There's a business continuity template. Those of you specifically, if you're with a smaller firm, very helpful resources out there for you to go and pull just to make sure you're lining up with what FINRA expects and other firms. There are also some customer resources out there. One of my favorite is actually the trusted contact resource. So you can actually give it to customers or part of the account opening process. It explains what a trusted contact is. It's very helpful to get customers comfortable with being able to give you that trusted contact information, which we all know is beneficial should there be any suspected elder fraud or abuse going on. You actually have someone you can reach out to. This has been helpful. We've actually done mailings and other things with this documents that's coming from FINRA because they're just so helpful to make a customer understand what that trusted contract rule is. The next item here is a compliance calendar. So it's also in that member hub. You can see there, we did put a link here. It's going to give you the conferences that are showing up. You can see your regulatory filings that are due, any annual renewal deadlines, CAT deadlines, certifications that are due. All of that's on the calendar there. You can go in and take a look at it. If you hover over when you're in the active calendar, you can see details about it. So when you're in there, if you looked over that blue, you could actually see the conference details that are available. So, it may be helpful for you, especially if you're a small compliance department and you're trying to make sure you're hitting all of your filing deadlines. FINRA's publishing that for themselves out there, and you can take a look at it. You can also see requests for comments. So you see it there at the top. It's very small print, but there's a gray one that's related to those rule filings that we were talking about on the prior slide. So any proposed rule would go out for comment, and you would be able to see when that comment period is due here in the calendar as well. And then you can have the information basically delivered to you. So one of the helpful tools that comes out is the weekly update email newsletter. So if you have not subscribed to this, it's a great way to see information. So you would go onto the FINRA website, you would click that you want to get the weekly update email letter. That's going to give you information about any pending conferences, things that are coming up as far as rule filings. They will give you a list of all the new items that might be in the FINRA queue. It comes out once a week. It's something easy to scroll and to see if anything affects your firm. And that's at the bottom of that member firm hub. And on the next screen, we'll show some of the items that you can sign up for. So monthly and quarterly disciplinary actions, which we'll talk about on the next slide, registration testing information. All of these come directly to your inbox. You can give a quick review, and then you can decide if it's actionable for your firm or not. Next is the disciplinary action. So this is any firm that or individual that's had a disciplinary action during a certain time period. These are published monthly, for example. They're very helpful to go out and just really see what they're finding in the examinations, what's going to enforcement, what the actions are. You can see, exactly if the individual was fined or the firm was fined. It will have a copy of the AWC, the consent order that's out there. If you want to go in, they're really good training items. You'll see these sometimes in training materials, actually. We use them in some newsletters occasionally. So, if an individual was fined, let's just say for off-channel communication specifically, and I'm writing a compliance bulletin, it's very helpful to be able to go into this and actually pull up those notices, cite it and actually refer it back out to show that this is real life actions that are happening in the industry. All right, Craig, you want to take it over for a minute?
Yeah. So thanks, Anne, for the all that information. As we all know, there's tons of information out there. There's a lot to digest annually, daily, and all of that. And so one of the things that we like to do is take that information, and when you dig into those SEC examination information and FINRA oversight information, we try to find those trends. Of topics and things that are on the I guess on the short list, if you will, for those examinations coming in. And a big part of that is then taking that, obviously looking at your own policies, procedures, and seeing where there's gaps at it. But generally, most folks in our firms aren't doing those types of functions or looking at those types of information. And so what we'll do is we'll take those, we'll digest them, and then we look at, okay, how should we implement this across our firm as far as training aspects are concerned. One of the big resources we use with that is also using the CE Council resources, which really targets the education side of things. They do have their quarterly highlights that they use. So those are really good resources to go in, look at what are some of the more recent reg notices that are out there and some of those topics, and are those topics fitting into the prior communications from the SEC or the FINRA regulatory oversight. And so what we do is we look at those trends. Again, this year, a lot of that has been around, obviously, AI is a big topic. We also look at how do we take that, implement, and push it out. So those FINRA disciplinary items are also very good resources and mentioned for getting that out in front of people and letting them know, hey, this is something you really need to do. With that, we'll move to the next slide. In conjunction with the CE Council, we'll also look at the regulatory element framework that FINRA publishes annually. And so with this, we like to try to find what are the regulators pointing out as their main education pieces for the different categories here. So ideally, our sales representatives out there, what are they going to be looking at? How does that align with the FINRA and SEC guidance that they're putting out in their annual publications? Is that in line with the CE Council? Where are we needing to then backfill in some of those gaps? So using this resource is very helpful to when you think about the education component, the training component, to make sure that we are, as firms, covering just the knowledge that the field needs, coordinating all that together. This is another great resource to make sure that you're not overloading on any particular topic, but that you are covering the vast majority of those highlighted areas from the other publications.
And it's helpful, I would say, Craig, too, to include this in your needs analysis.
Mhm.
So I actually will note it in my needs analysis so that, if we go back and, say there's a regulatory exam and, they want to know what best interest training was for that calendar year, you can see that it was included in the FINRA regulatory element, but it was also maybe included in your internal training. So I like to draw it out there and actually show where all the training comes from in the needs analysis. Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of topics, right, that we have to cover and a couple ways to get them delivered to the field. So
Yeah, we like to incorporate them into the larger training plan as well. And it also helps us, now that it is an annual requirement, it really does help us try to streamline the education that is thrown at our industry, because there are so many various requirements that they're trying to cover, from an insurance, FINRA, regulatory element, your firm element, if you have designations, all of that. And so trying to utilize that into one larger education plan is really helpful, especially when you're incorporating some of these other topics like using a FINRA disciplinary action as a training tool as well. We incorporate all of that into the larger plan. So very, very good point there, Anne. Thank you.
yeah, I think it helps you not double dip. You don't hit it twice, but it also helps to make sure you've checked all the things that are annual training requirements because there are a number of items, seniors, your Reg BI, things that you have to hit every year. So it's really helpful to know where we're getting that training from.
All right, next slide. Okay, here we obviously we were talking a lot about FINRA resources, and so there are obviously a lot of general websites out there. FINRA obviously is the more important one since they have the most information that we are interacting with on a regular basis. But NASA has a really good site. We'll talk a little bit about some of the resources there here in a moment, but we obviously are working with state regulators as well. So looking for contacting your regulator or other resources on that site. So if you haven't perused it in a while, I would definitely encourage you to do that. Obviously, CE Council and SEC. We threw NFA and MSRB. Some people are members of NFA. So those are there. And then, of course, the SILAFoundation.org website has various information. So would encourage you that. On the next slide, we pulled out a couple of individual links here. So the very top one, Ann already touched on the subscription link. So when you're thinking about how do I keep up with all of this information that is coming at you from the various places, whether it's FINRA, the SEC, NASA, there's reg notices, there's just a myriad of other publications. And it can get very daunting trying to find it or bookmarking all of these places. And so, as Ann mentioned earlier, with FINRA, they have an email subscription. This particular link is part of FINRA's website, but it gives you access to other email subscriptions. So if you wanted to join, say, NASA's email subscription, you can do that through that link there. If you aren't already doing those, I would highly recommend it. It's much easier to have that brought into you rather than you having to go find it. And so again, you have FINRA, NASA, SEC. There's a whole lot of other ones on there, so I would highly recommend signing up for that if you don't already. The other links there, I know there's a lot of registration folks here, so using the BDR, as it should be RA, fee setting schedule and the IAR fee setting schedule. There's a lot of good information on those that do get updated. I know sometimes we don't think about it as much with the fees in that, but RSL information for states is on that BD fee setting schedule. They do update those as people start to adopt an RSL rule within their individual states. And then also with the IAR, the EVEP program, which we'll talk about here in a second, that's included there as well. And so those are good resources to also kind of keep your hands around, not just what are the costs and things like that, but some of the other requirements that individual states might have that you would be interested in. The NASA EVEP program, again, that's a good resource to keep going back to as more and more states adopt that. I know there's a lot of communication as that happens. I know it's not as fast as we would like from everybody's perspective, but each state has their own challenges in making sure that that gets through their legislative process. So it can sometimes get missed or just out of mind because it's not something that happens as quickly. Going there is very good practice to do. Lastly, the IARC catalog. This is new. They just launched this not long ago, and so if you are somebody that either A has your individual reps look for IARCE courses, they can go there. They're a list of courses both from states and other vendors. It's a good resource just to add more options to the IARCE component, given that you're not allowed to kind of duplicate any of those courses. So would encourage that. And then last is the NFA checklist. If you are an NFA member, annually, we're going there to pull down their self-exam questionnaires, some other resources on that page. So if you are a member, again, quick resource there for that. And I think
And I know Craig mentioned on the prior slide about SILA. If you are a SILA member, there is a forum out there you can ask questions. I actually just had to ask a question a few weeks ago, and other members who may have encountered that information will respond quickly. So it's very helpful. It's crowdsourcing basically, right? I may not know, but Craig might know and be able to put it there. So it's a blog that you can just post your questions about whatever you encounter. I know that EVAP has come up with some questions with the nuances, right, Craig, of the states of how they're adapting it. And so you can kind of go and see how, you might be working with California, for example, or Texas, and you can ask just how other members have worked with it. So
yeah. And I know there are some folks that, because we're in securities industry and maybe your firm has um, issues with posting into a chat room or something like that, there is another option for securities folks. I think if you're interested in that, you can certainly reach out to me and we can get you in contact, or you can go directly to like Sherry Coleman to get signed up for that. And that's a way to do it through an email method rather than a chat room if your firm really does have issues with you posting stuff in a chat. And then in addition to that, nobody likes to kind of go it alone, especially in our industry with a lot of regulations and it's always changing and that. And so we thought it would be very important to highlight some of the industry conferences. Um, as you can see, there are several of them there. I think just one of the best things about that is being able to get around your colleagues and talk about how you're doing things and sharing those ideas and those concerns with how new regulations might be coming out, what challenges one firm has most likely is similar to another firm. And so that can also create a group of colleagues that you can help when you're outside of those conferences. So networking and creating that group is really vital from a compliance perspective because no matter what seat you sit in within the compliance area, you're probably going to run across something and go, I wonder how so and so is doing that, or this is new for me. I wonder if somebody else has already looked at that, and then having those resources just to reach out to other folks is really important. So those conferences are listed there. I know the FINRA annual conference just wrapped up a couple weeks ago, which was always good to attend, and you can do that virtually as well. So attend
yeah, there
conference.
are a number of these that do have virtual options, Craig. I think that, sometimes you look at the conference list and you think I don't have the budget to attend, but there are a lot of options out there that are also you can attend virtually. And then, I'd mentioned earlier on the FINRA training slide, there are, some of them that are just topic specific that are free that you can go in anytime. FINRA does a call every couple months that's helpful. A lot of them are targeted for small firms where you may not have the resources to send someone to a conference, but there are options out there that you can attend. And if you are members, of SILA or ARM or some of those, they actually have some virtual committee members too, where you can actually attend monthly meetings and get information and share with that network that Craig mentioned that you start to build to ask those questions.
Yeah, I use people on a regular. And so if you're not plugged in, a conference is a great way to do it, or just reach out. Like I said, we're all a helpful group. We always like to bounce things off each other and make sure that if there is a way to make your life a little easier, I'm always happy to do that, and many are for me as well. So and I think we have one more. Yeah, so SILA ongoing webinars. So obviously, we have these webinars here. SILA does them on a regular basis. They're free for everybody. So I would encourage you to go back and look at some of the old ones. They're always really good. But if not, look at some of those coming up in the future. I'm not sure what the next one is, but
Yeah, with these two, you can use them. We mentioned onboarding for some of those on-demand webinars. If you're bringing someone on, you know, we're all busy. Sometimes it's difficult to get people trained. You can actually give them a webinar series to watch and they can kind of get and then bring questions to you. So I think it's helpful to have a lot of these resources that are at no cost to firms that you can build your onboarding process to get someone, started in the industry. I think it's we open for questions next. Are there any questions, Mary Ellen?
I'm not
I'm not seeing anything. Any questions posted?
I know we will be sending this out after the call with all the links that we mentioned. If anyone has any questions about those links, please reach out to Mary Ellen. We can get those routed to the proper person.
All right. Well, having no additional questions, Craig and Ian, I want to thank you both so much for sharing all your expertise on this regulatory compliance, securities resources. It's nice to know that there's a lot of information out there and where to find it. I especially want to thank you for being a friend of the Sila Foundation. We appreciate you and your time this afternoon. As a reminder to everybody else, our webinars are free of charge. They're open to the public. Sharing our invitations is appreciated. Watch for and complete the post-webinar survey and plan on joining us next month for a discussion on adjuster licensing.